Welcome to the Deep Sleep Science Channel. Tonight, we're drifting gently into the vast and fascinating world of the Amazon rainforest, a place of immense rivers, layered canopies, and countless living connections quietly unfolding every moment. As you listen, there's nothing you need to do and nowhere you need to go, just relax. And if you enjoy exploring calm science like this, you might like or subscribe before sleep carries you deeper into the forest's rhythm. The Amazon basin stretches across several countries, and the largest share of the rainforest lies within Brazil, forming an enormous continuous green region on the map. The Amazon is commonly described as the largest continuous tropical rainforest on Earth, a single connected forest system so big that it shapes weather, rivers, and life across a wide part of the continent. The Amazon basin is more than just trees. It also includes major rivers, wetlands, floodplains, and forests that spend parts of the year underwater, creating many different kinds of habitats in one region. People often describe the Amazon rainforest's size in the millions of square kilometers, a scale so large it can feel almost like looking at an entire continent's worth of forest. One of the strongest physical forces shaping Amazon life is the Amazon River system, because it carries water across the basin in vast, moving pathways that connect forests, floodplains, and distant headwaters. The Amazon River is widely recognized as the largest river in the world by discharge, meaning it moves more water per second than any other river, with a flow powerful enough to influence the ocean near its mouth. Large tributaries feed into the Amazon from both the north and the south, and each tributary brings its own sediments, chemistry, and living communities into the larger river network. The Amazon's drainage network includes thousands of rivers and streams, so even remote forest areas are often linked to the main river through smaller channels that carry water and nutrients. Seasonal changes in rainfall strongly affect river levels across the basin, and that rise and fall rhythm becomes a kind of natural calendar for plants, animals, and people who live near the water. Many Amazon floodplains experience regular annual flooding, and those predictable high waters can reshape habitats, move nutrients, and open temporary pathways through the forest. Vazia forests are seasonally flooded forests tied to sediment-rich whitewater rivers, where nutrient-laden waters can support distinctive plant communities that thrive with the yearly flood pulse. Igapo forests are seasonally flooded forests connected to nutrient-poor blackwater or clearwater rivers, and their plants often show adaptations to living with fewer nutrients and long periods of inundation. Near the Amazon's estuary, tidal forests form where river flow meets ocean tides, so the landscape is shaped by both freshwater movement and the regular push and pull of the sea. Flood pulses create a shifting pattern of water and land across large areas, turning some places into temporary lakes, channels, or flooded woods, and then returning them to dry forest again. The river corridors of the Amazon act like long natural highways, guiding the movement of aquatic organisms and also shaping where human communities travel, trade, and settle along the banks. The Amazon River carries huge amounts of suspended sediment, much of it originating in the Andes, and those fine particles can travel long distances before settling and shaping floodplains downstream. The estuary region of the Amazon can influence coastal and ocean processes far beyond the shoreline, because river water and sediments don't simply stop at land's edge, they continue outward and interact with the sea. Freshwater from the Amazon forms a low salinity plume that stretches into the Atlantic Ocean, a broad surface layer of river water that can spread far from the mouth of the river. That freshwater plume can transport nutrients and organic material from land into marine ecosystems, quietly linking forest processes to ocean food, webs, and coastal conditions. The Amazon rainforest plays an important role in regional moisture recycling through evapotranspiration, where water moves from soil to plants and then back into the air as vapor. Evapotranspiration from the forest returns large amounts of water vapor to the atmosphere, and that moisture can later become clouds and rain, helping sustain wet conditions over broad areas. Moisture traveling across the basin can be recycled again and again by forest transpiration before it leaves the region, which means the forest helps keep water moving through the air locally, not only through rivers. This large-scale atmospheric moisture transport linked to the Amazon is sometimes described as flying rivers because it behaves like a flowing current of water just carried in air instead of a channel. These airborne moisture flows can influence rainfall patterns in parts of South America beyond the basin, meaning the Amazon's water cycle can reach far outside the forest itself. The rainforest has a layered structure often described as emergent trees, a canopy, an understory, and a forest floor, and each layer creates its own light, temperature, and living space. The Amazon supports extremely high plant diversity compared with most other regions, and the richness comes from countless niches shaped by water, soils, light, and long ecological history. The Amazon is often cited as containing a substantial fraction of the world's known species, reflecting how many different kinds of life can fit into a warm, wet, complex environment. Scientists have catalogued tens of thousands of plant species across the broader Amazon region, and many of these plants are specialized for particular soils, flood patterns, or light conditions. The Amazon contains an immense number of individual trees spread across thousands of species, so even a single walk through the forest can pass by many different kinds of trunks, leaves, and forms. Many Amazon soils are heavily weathered and can be low in nutrients, yet the forest remains lush because nutrients move rapidly through living plants and decaying protein material rather than accumulating in rich soil. Rapid decomposition and nutrient cycling help keep nutrients flowing through the ecosystem, so fallen leaves and dead wood are broken down quickly. Return to the living system. Leaf litter tends to decompose faster in warm, wet conditions, which means the forest floor often operates like a quiet recycling system, turning dead material into usable nutrients. Nutrient uptake by shallow roots can be effective because many nutrients are released near the surface where fresh organic matter breaks down, allowing plants to capture them before they wash away. In many places, when forest is cleared, soil productivity can decline quickly because the cycle is disrupted and nutrients that were once held in living biomass are lost from the system. Terra preta, or Amazonian dark earth, is an unusually fertile soil found in parts of the basin, and it stands out because it can remain rich and dark compared with surrounding soils. Terra preta is linked to long-term human activity and contains stable charcoal-rich material, showing how people in the past could reshape soil properties in ways that lasted. Terra preta can include fragments of pottery and traces of past organic residues, offering clues that these soils formed where people lived, cooked, farmed, and managed waste over long periods. Charcoal in terra preta can persist for very long times, helping stabilize carbon in the soil and contributing to its long-lasting fertility. Some terra preta patches can be deep and distinctly different from nearby soils, creating localized pockets where crops and plants can grow more easily than in surrounding weathered ground. The existence of terra preta has influenced modern interest in biochar and soil carbon ideas because it shows a real-world example of carbon-rich material helping soil function over long timescales. The Amazon has a long history of human habitation, including complex societies that lived with the river system and managed landscapes in ways that still leave, quote, traces today. Archaeological evidence indicates that pre-Columbian peoples built earthworks and roads and managed forests in certain regions, suggesting long-term planning and large-scale landscape organization. Modern remote sensing tools, including LiDAR, have helped reveal some earthworks that were difficult to see from the ground because the forest canopy can hide patterns in terrain. Some Amazon areas show signs of historical agroforestry and domesticated forest composition, where useful plant species may be more common due to centuries of human selection and management. Indigenous peoples in the Amazon represent many distinct cultures and languages, reflecting deep histories and varied relationships with different forest and, quote, river environments. Many indigenous territories overlap with relatively intact forest, and in many cases these lands are places where large continuous habitat still remains. Protected areas and indigenous territories often have lower forest loss rates than unprotected lands, showing how governance and stewardship can shape what happens to forests over time. The Amazon's human population includes major cities as well as remote riverine and forest communities, with lifestyles ranging from urban economies to small settlements tied closely to river seasons. River transport remains essential in many areas because dense forest and seasonal flooding make road building difficult, so boats and waterways often remain the most practical connection between communities. The Amazon's living variety includes thousands of fish species, and that diversity exists because the basin contains many different kinds of water habitats: fast rivers, slow floodplains, dark streams, and seasonal lakes, each offering different food sources, water chemistry, and shelter. Many Amazon rivers are described as white water, black water, or clear water, and these labels are simple ways to talk about what the water carries: how much sediment is suspended, how many dissolved organic compounds tint the water, and what that means for light, nutrients, and the organisms that can thrive there. Blackwater rivers often look tea-colored or very dark because they contain lots of dissolved organic compounds from decaying leaves and wood, and these compounds can slightly acidify the water and reduce light penetration, shaping which plants, insects, and fish are best adapted to live there. Whitewater rivers are typically rich in sediment and often appear muddy, and because they carry nutrients and fine particles, they can fertilize floodplains when they overflow, supporting productive floodplain forests and diverse fish communities that rely on seasonal nutrient pulses. Clearwater rivers can have lower sediment loads and appear much clearer, which allows more sunlight to move through the water and can support different algae, aquatic plants, and fish behaviors compared with darker or more turbid rivers. One famous Amazon feature is the meeting of waters, where two rivers with different colors and properties run side by side for a distance before they mix, creating a striking natural contrast that reflects differences in water temperature, chemistry, and sediment content. At these contrasting confluences, mixing can be delayed because the rivers may differ in speed, density, and suspended materials. So the waters don't blend immediately, and that delay can create temporary zones with distinct conditions that influence where fish and other organisms prefer to swim. Amazon floodplains support fish migrations that follow the seasonal rise of water into the forest, and this movement is not random. It's closely timed to the flood pulse, because flooding opens up new feeding grounds and safe nursery areas. During high water, many fish move into flooded forests to feed and breed, using the branches and submerged vegetation as shelter from predators and as places to lay eggs or protect young in calmer waters. Seasonal flooding can let fish reach fruits, seeds, and insects that become available once the forest is underwater, so the flood season can function like a buffet d'eau that connects the forest's productivity to aquatic food webs. Some Amazon fish act as seed dispersers because they eat fruits and later pass intact seeds in new locations. And this means the river system is not only moving water, it can also help move plant life across the landscape through animal behavior. The Amazon hosts freshwater dolphins, including the pink river dolphin, which are adapted to river and floodplain life, with bodies and behaviors suited to prey, navigating complex waterways rather than open ocean. In high water seasons, freshwater dolphins can move into flooded forests, where the water becomes a maze of trunks and branches. And their ability to maneuver and hunt in these changing spaces shows how strongly Amazon animals are shaped by seasonal hydrology. Large reptiles such as caimans live in Amazon rivers and wetlands, and they help structure aquatic ecosystems by acting as powerful predators that influence crab, fish, amphibian, and smaller reptile populations. Large constrictor snakes, including anacondas, are closely tied to aquatic and floodplain environments, where slow-moving water and dense vegetation support ambush hunting and provide cover for such large-bodied predators. Jaguars occur in parts of the Amazon and often sit near the top of forest food webs, and their presence can influence prey behavior and distribution, shaping when and where animals feed, travel, and rest. Harpy eagles are among the largest rainforest raptors, and they hunt within forest canopies where agility and strength matter, because catching prey among branches requires powerful flight control and strong talons. Sloths are well known for an arboreal lifestyle, and their slow movement is part of an energy-saving strategy tied to a low-calorie leaf-based diet, which helps explain why they spend so much time resting in trees. Many Amazon primates rely on fruits, leaves, and insects, and different species often use different canopy levels or times of day, which reduces direct grazing competition and allows more primate species to share the same forest. Some primates are especially important seed dispersers for certain trees because they carry fruits away from the parent plant and drop or pass seeds elsewhere, helping trees spread and maintain healthy genetic mixing across the forest. The Amazon hosts a wide diversity of frogs, including species known for chemical defenses, and this diversity is supported by constant warmth, abundant moisture, and countless small breeding sites created by rain and flooding. Some poison dart frogs produce potent toxins, and in some cases, these toxins are linked to what the frogs eat in the wild, showing how chemical defenses can be influenced by diet and by the forest's complex web of insects and plants. Insect diversity in the Amazon is extremely high, with vast numbers of beetles, ants, butterflies, and flies, and this abundance matters because insects are pollinators, decomposers, prey for birds and bats, and major drivers of nutrient movement. Ants play many ecological roles, at once hunting other insects, cleaning up dead material, dispersing seeds, and forming partnerships with plants or sap-feeding insects, so they function like a living workforce that touches nearly every part of the ecosystem. Leafcutter ants harvest pieces of vegetation not to eat directly, but to grow fungus as their primary food source, and this farming behavior creates a direct link between plant material and a managed fungal crop inside the nest. Because leafcutter ant colonies process huge amounts of leaves and soil, they can influence nutrient movement and soil structure, and over time, their nesting and AD. Foraging can change how organic matter is mixed and where nutrients concentrate. Termites are major decomposers in many Amazon habitats, and by breaking down dead wood and plant matter, they help return locked-up nutrients to the biomes system supporting the constant recycling that keeps forests productive even on poor soils. Many Amazon butterflies show seasonal shifts in abundance tied to rainfall and plant growth, because caterpillars depend on specific host plants and adults, often rely on nectar or rotting fruit that can vary with wet and dry conditions. Some Amazon insects mimic leaves, bark, or other insects, and this camouflage is a practical survival tool in a crowded ecosystem, reducing predation by car, blending into the background, or by resembling something dangerous or unappetizing. The Amazon includes many pollination relationships involving bees, beetles, butterflies, bats, and birds. And these relationships are essential because many tropical plants depend on animals to move pollen between flowers. In dense rainforest, wind pollination is often less effective because airflow is reduced under the canopy. So many trees rely on animal pollinators that can deliberately travel from flower to flower, increasing the chance of successful reproduction. Some Amazon plants release strong scents at night to attract nocturnal pollinators, and this timing can match the activity patterns of bats or night-flying dar. Insects, showing how plants coordinate reproduction with animal schedules. Bats can pollinate certain flowers and also disperse seeds after eating fruit. And because bats can travel far at night, they can connect distant parts of the MB forest by moving pollen and seeds across large areas. Fruit-eating birds and mammals spread seeds through the forest, and this matters because seeds that fall directly under a parent tree often face more pests. Competition. So dispersal helps seedlings find better chances elsewhere. Toucans are well-known fruit eaters and seed dispersers, and their ability to swallow and carry fruits means they can move seeds away from parent trees, supporting grass. Forest regeneration across many seasons. Macaws travel long distances and feed on fruits and seeds, and their movement patterns can link different forest patches and river edges while they're seed handling. Behaviors influence which seeds survive and where they end up. Some parrots gather at clay licks, and one explanation is that the minerals in the clay may help supplement diets that are heavy in fruits and seeds, while another is that clay may help bind certain plant compounds, making some foods easier to tolerate. Clay licks can become important gathering points for many species because they concentrate animals in a predictable location, creating moments where birds, mammals, and even researchers can observe how different species share resources. Fungi are essential to Amazon nutrient cycling because they break down leaf litter and wood, turning complex plant material into simpler compounds that can be reused by plants and microbes. Mycorrhizal fungi form partnerships with plant roots, and in these relationships the fungus helps the plant access nutrients and water, while the plant SAR provides the fungus with sugars made through photosynthesis. Some Amazon trees depend strongly on mycorrhizal partnerships to grow in nutrient-poor soils, because the fungal network can explore more soil volume than roots alone and can help deliver scarce nutrients more efficiently. Dead wood can be colonized by fungi that soften and decompose it, and that process not only recycles nutrients, but also creates habitats like cavities and crumbling logs that shelter insects, amphibians, and small mammals. The forest canopy intercepts rainfall, so much of the water hits leaves first and then drips down slowly, which can reduce erosion and create a more gradual, steady delivery of water to the ground rather than a single harsh impact. Patterns of canopy throughfall can create small-scale differences in moisture because some places receive frequent drips while others stay comparatively sheltered. And these tiny variations can influence where seedlings grow best. Rainforests create their own microclimates, often cooler and more humid beneath the canopy than in open land, and that stable, shaded environment helps, quote, many species survive by preventing extreme heat and dryness. Many Amazon animals are sensitive to humidity and temperature changes, so microclimates influence where they forage, when they move, and which parts of the forest they prefer, especially for species that need moist skin or stable temperatures. Tree hollows and cavities provide shelter and nesting spaces, and because these natural rooms are limited, they can be valuable resources for birds, bats, and kay. Small mammals that depend on safe, enclosed sites. Fallen logs can act as nurse logs, holding moisture and offering softer, nutrient-rich surfaces where seedlings can establish, which helps young plants survive. The challenging early stage of growth on the forest floor. Some understory plants are adapted to very low light and grow slowly, waiting until a canopy gap opens, and this strategy helps them persist for years in shade panned. So they can quickly take advantage when sunlight finally reaches them. When trees fall, gaps open and allow bursts of sunlight to reach the ground, and those brighter patches can trigger rapid growth of fast-growing plants that are specialized for quick colonization and recovery after disturbance. Pioneer plants often grow quickly in these gaps and help stabilize soil and rebuild shade, creating a natural sequence where early colonizers prepare the environment for slower-growing trees that may later dominate. The Amazon experiences natural disturbances like storms, floods, and tree falls, and these events are not only disruptions, they also maintain habitat diversity by creating a patchwork of different forest ages and structures. Rivers in the Amazon can change course over time, and when channels shift, they can create new islands, sandbars, and young habitats where plants and animals colonize in stages, slowly turning bare sediment into living forest again. Many floodplain forests include species adapted to being underwater for months. And this isn't just tolerance. It can shape everything from leaf structure, timing of growth, because these plants must survive long periods with flooded roots. Some flood-tolerant trees can handle low oxygen conditions around their roots during long floods, and they do this through special physiological strategies that help them keep vital tissues alive, even when water blocks normal oxygen flow. The Amazon basin contains upland terra firma forests that do not flood seasonally, and these areas often feel different in structure and species mix because the soil stays drier and the plants are not forced to cope with months of inundation. Terra firma forests commonly have different tree communities than Varzea or Higapo forests because flooding and nutrient inputs strongly shape which species can thrive and how fast they can grow. Many Amazon animals move between habitat types with the seasons, following fruit availability, safer ground during floods, or breeding sites, which means their life cycles are tied to the basin's yearly rhythm. The Amazon stores large amounts of carbon in tree biomass and soils, and this matters because carbon stored in living forests is not in the atmosphere, so the INT. Forest acts as a major reservoir in the global carbon cycle. Through photosynthesis, Amazon vegetation takes in carbon dioxide and turns it into plant tissue, storing carbon in trunks, branches, leaves, and grass. Roots, and the sheer number of trees makes this process significant at planetary scale. When forests are burned or cleared, much of the stored carbon can be released back into the atmosphere, either quickly through fire and decay or gradually as disturbed. Land loses biomass over time. Amazon forests influence regional climate by affecting both surface temperatures and atmospheric moisture, because dense vegetation shades the ground, cools the air through transpiration, and helps keep humidity high. Rainfall patterns across the basin are shaped by large-scale atmospheric circulation and ocean conditions, meaning that shifts in ocean temperatures and wind patterns can change where and when rain falls over the forest. El Niño events can alter Amazon rainfall and sometimes bring drought conditions to parts of the basin, which can stress forests, reduce river levels, affect people and wildlife that depend on consistent water. Severe droughts can lower rivers, disrupt transport, and strain communities and ecosystems. Because boats may not reach some areas, fish habitats can shrink, and forests can become more vulnerable to heat and fire. Low river levels can isolate floodplain lakes, reducing the water connections fish use to move and breed, and this can compress aquatic life into smaller spaces, where resources and oxygen may become limited. Extreme heat during drought can increase wildfire risk, especially in disturbed forests, because dry leaf litter and opened canopies make it easier for flames to spread where intact rainforest would normally resist burning. Smoke from fires can reduce air quality in Amazon cities and towns, and that smoke can carry fine particles that affect breathing, visibility, and daily life, even for people far from the fire itself. Large-scale deforestation can fragment habitats, creating forest edges that behave differently from deep interior forest, and these edge areas can change temperatures, wind, and humidity in ways that reshape which species can survive there. Forest edges tend to be hotter, drier, and windier than interior forest, and these conditions can stress shade-loving plants, increase tree mortality, and favor species that tolerate more light and dryness. Fragmentation can limit movement for animals that avoid open areas, so even if forest patches remain, species that need continuous cover may struggle to reach food, mates, or safe territory. Some Amazon species are highly specialized and depend on intact interior forest, meaning they may require stable humidity, dense canopy cover, particular food resources that are less common near edges or in disturbed areas. Other species can adapt to secondary forests and disturbed habitats, but the overall community changes, and the mix of animals and plants often becomes different from old-growth forest, with some species declining and others becoming more common. Secondary forests can regrow after clearing, yet rebuilding old-growth structure can take decades to centuries, because large trees, complex canopy layers, and long-lived species need time to return. Even so, regrowth forests can still provide habitat and absorb carbon, depending on how they are protected and managed, and they can act as buffers and corridors that connect older forest areas. The Amazon includes major protected areas such as national parks and ecological reserves, and these protected lands are designed to conserve ecosystems, wildlife, and sometimes traditional uses across multiple countries. Conservation strategies often combine protected areas with indigenous land rights, sustainable use, and restoration, recognizing that protecting forests can involve both legal protection and local stewardship. Illegal mining can release pollutants like mercury into river systems, and mercury can accumulate in fish and move up food chains, creating health risks for wildlife and for people who rely on fish as a staple food. Large infrastructure projects like roads and dams can increase access into previously remote forest, and that access can accelerate land use change by making logging, settlement, and agriculture easier to expand. Some dams change seasonal flooding patterns downstream, and when flood timing or water levels shift, floodplain forests, fish breeding cycles, and wetland habitats can be disrupted. Cattle ranching and commodity agriculture have been major drivers of deforestation in parts of the Amazon because converting forest to pasture or cropland often removes large areas of native habitat. Logging can happen legally or illegally, and even selective logging can change forest structure by opening gaps, creating roads, and damaging surrounding, trees, which can have long-lasting ecological effects. Selective logging can also increase fire vulnerability because opening the canopy lets more sunlight and wind dry out leaves and branches on the ground, making it easier for fires to ignite and spread. The Amazon contains many plants used for medicine, food, and materials, and the forest's chemical diversity includes compounds that people have learned to capture, used through long observation and cultural knowledge. Indigenous knowledge systems often include detailed understanding of plant properties, seasonal cycles, and animal behavior because survival and well-being in the forest depend on reading subtle cues in weather, water, and living communities. The Amazon produces traded products such as certain fruits, nuts, and plant oils, and these goods often depend on intact forest conditions, linking economic value to ecosystem health. Brazil nuts are harvested from wild trees, and their continued production is closely tied to healthy forest because these trees are part of complex ecological relationships with pollinators and seed dispersers. Brazil nut trees can live for a long time and depend on stable forest conditions for reproduction, meaning that long-term forest protection supports not just wildlife, but also sustained harvests across generations. Some Amazon fruits rely on animal pollinators and dispersers, so when biodiversity is maintained, it helps keep these fruit-producing systems functioning, connecting forest conservation to food resources and local economies. Electric eels in the Amazon can generate powerful electrical discharges, and they use electricity in more than one way, helping with navigation, self-defense, and stunning prey in murky or complex waters. Piranhas are a diverse group with varied diets, and while some species can eat flesh, others feed more on plants, invertebrates, or mixed foods, showing that a bull famous name can still hide a wide range of behaviors. Many Amazon fish are adapted to low oxygen waters and may gulp air or use specialized breathing strategies, which is important because floodplain waters can become warm and stagnant, reducing the amount of dissolved oxygen available. Some floodplain fish can survive in isolated pools during dry seasons, and this resilience helps species persist through dramatic seasonal changes when water bodies shrink and connections disappear. The Amazon's aquatic habitats include main river channels, side channels, oxbow lakes, floodplain lakes, and small forest streams, and each habitat has different flow, oxygen levels, light conditions, and food sources. Oxbow lakes form when a river meander is cut off, leaving a curved lake behind, and these lakes can develop distinct ecology, often calmer and more rich than the main channel. Small forest streams can be stained by tannins and support specialized insects, amphibians, and fish, because shaded, narrow waters have different temperatures, chemistry, and shelter than wide rivers. Amphibians in the Amazon are often highly sensitive to moisture and microclimate conditions, and this sensitivity exists because their skin can absorb water and gases directly, making stable humidity and temperature crucial for survival. Many Amazon frogs reproduce in temporary pools formed by rain or flooding, using these short-lived water bodies as nurseries where eggs and tadpoles can develop away from larger predators found in permanent rivers. Some Amazon amphibians lay eggs on leaves hanging above water, and when the young hatch, the tadpoles drop into the pool below, which is a strategy that helps protect early development from aquatic threats. The Amazon's reptile diversity includes many lizards adapted to life in trees, on the ground, or near water, and these different lifestyles show how reptiles can occupy a wide range of thermal and structural niches within the forest. Bird diversity in the Amazon is extremely high, and many species occupy narrow ecological roles, meaning each bird may specialize in certain foods, canopy heights, or activity times to reduce competition. Mixed species bird flocks move through understory and mid-canopy zones, and this cooperation helps individuals find food more efficiently while benefiting from shared vigilance against predators. Army ants can trigger ant-following bird behavior, where birds trail the moving swarm and catch insects that flee from the ants, forming a dynamic feeding partnership without direct cooperation. Many Amazon mammals are nocturnal, including rodents and small carnivores, and nighttime activity can reduce overheating, avoid daytime predators, take advantage of different food availability. Nocturnal lifestyles also lower exposure to intense daytime heat and light, helping animals conserve water and energy while moving through cooler, darker DR. Forest conditions. Some Amazon mammals communicate territory or identity using scent marking, leaving chemical cues that other individuals detect even in low peen. Visibility environments filled with vegetation. Palm species in the Amazon provide fruits, fibers, construction materials, and habitat, and their usefulness illustrates how one plant group can support both ecological communities and human livelihoods. Palm fruits often become critical food sources for birds and mammals, particularly when other fruits are scarce, helping sustain animal populations through seasonal changes. Certain Amazon trees produce large fruits that are dispersed by big mammals or by floodwaters, showing how seed movement can depend on both animal behavior and hydrological cycles. Floodwaters can carry seeds long distances, spreading plant species across riverbanks and floodplains, and this transport can connect plant populations, separated by geography. The forest's leaf litter layer hosts diverse invertebrates such as beetles and spiders, and these organisms contribute to decomposition, soil mixing, and food webs that support higher trophic levels. Predatory arthropods help regulate insect populations, and by controlling prey numbers, they influence plant health, pollination balance, and overall ecosystem stability. Many spiders and insects rely on camouflage, matching bark, moss, or leaves, which demonstrates evolutionary adaptation to visual predators in a densely structured habitat. Some insects display warning coloration that signals chemical defenses, reducing attacks by predators that learn to associate bright patterns with unpalatable experiences. Mimicry occurs widely, where harmless species resemble toxic ones, and this visual trick lowers predation risk by exploiting predators' learned caution. Plants in the Amazon produce defensive chemicals to deter herbivores or pathogens, and these compounds represent long evolutionary interactions between plant survival and consumer pressure. Certain plants form mutualisms with ants that defend leaves from herbivores, providing shelter or nectar in exchange for protection, illustrating cooperative ecological relationships. Flowering and fruiting schedules can vary among species so that food resources exist year-round, stabilizing wildlife populations that depend on continuous supply. Even with staggered availability, animals must track changing fruit patterns across landscapes, and this movement shapes migration, territory size, and energy use. Large mammals such as tapirs disperse seeds over long distances because of their wide-ranging movement and digestive transport of plant material. Tapirs travel between different habitats, connecting ecosystems by carrying seeds and influencing vegetation patterns across ecological boundaries. Some birds nest in riverbank cliffs or sandy edges, using burrows that are shaped by erosion, demonstrating adaptation to dynamic shoreline conditions. Erosion and deposition constantly reshape riverbanks, meaning nesting habitats shift over time, requiring birds to relocate or adjust breeding sites. Wetlands beyond the forest canopy create additional habitat diversity, supporting aquatic plants, amphibians, and birds distinct from upland forest. Communities. Waterlogged soils in wetlands can store large amounts of carbon because decomposition slows under oxygen-poor conditions, affecting long-term carbon. Storage. Slow decomposition in saturated soils increases organic accumulation, meaning these wetlands become reservoirs of carbon and nutrients. The Amazon soundscape arises from insects, birds, frogs, and mammals vocalizing at different times, creating acoustic layering that reflects ecological activity patterns. Dawn and dusk often mark peak vocal activity because animals coordinate feeding, mating, and territory communication around changing light conditions. Some frogs synchronize calls during rain events, forming collective choruses that enhance mating success and signal reproductive timing. Plants release volatile compounds that can influence atmospheric chemistry, and these emissions can interact with sunlight and other gases to shape local air composition. Forest-generated aerosols can help cloud formation by providing particles around which water condenses, linking vegetation to weather processes. Organic material trapped in branch junctions forms canopy soils that host miniature ecosystems high above the ground. These canopy soils sustain microbes and small invertebrates, demonstrating that ecological processes occur vertically as well as horizontally. Bromeliads store water in leaf rosettes, creating microhabitats where insects and amphibians can live and reproduce. Tiny aquatic communities develop inside these plant pools, supporting larvae and microorganisms adapted to confined water bodies. Vertical habitat layering means different species specialize at different heights, reducing competition and promoting diversity. Predators often specialize by hunting at specific forest levels, aligning sensory abilities and mobility with prey availability. Nutrient movement in the Amazon depends on decomposition, root uptake, and symbiotic fungi, forming interconnected cycles. Sediments deposited in floodplains create fertile soils that support distinctive vegetation and influence settlement patterns. This fertility shapes plant communities and sometimes human agriculture near riverbanks. In nutrient-poor Igapo forests, plants adapt with slow growth and specialized leaves, reflecting environmental constraints. Water chemistry differences between river types influence fish communities, and energy flows through food webs. Dissolved organic matter reduces light in some waters, affecting aquatic plant productivity. Clearer waters allow greater light penetration and support different biological communities. Geological history shaped by Andean uplift altered river pathways and sediment distribution. River gradients and sediment loads determine channel behavior, influencing habitat formation. Natural levees rise above floodplains and support unique vegetation due to reduced flooding. Vegetation on levees differs because drainage conditions vary compared with lower basins. Floodplain basins retain water longer, sustaining swamp forests and aquatic life. Campina rana vegetation grows on sandy soils, showing adaptation to nutrient scarcity. Sandy forests support specialized plants able to manage low fertility and moisture retention. Savanna-like patches within the basin create ecological mosaics that increase biodiversity. Fire rarely occurs in intact humid forest, but rises when dryness and ignition combine. Disturbance and drought can introduce fires to ecosystems not historically adapted to them. River extremes like floods and droughts shape survival and reproduction patterns. Large floods expand aquatic habitat, while pushing land animals toward elevated ground. During extreme floods, animals cluster on levees and ridges, showing adaptive behavior. Floating vegetation mats provide shelter and feeding grounds for aquatic species. Flooded forests enable predators to hunt in areas normally inaccessible. Many arthropods survive flooding by moving upward into vegetation. Some forest floor species depend on dry windows for reproduction and foraging. The Amazon's incredible productivity can support a huge mass of insects, and that matters because insects are the foundation for many food chains here. When you have so many insects feeding on plants, recycling dead material, and pollinating flowers, you also create steady food for birds, bats, frogs, and small mammals that depend on them. Bats in the Amazon are not all the same type of bat, and many are highly specialized. Some are expert insect hunters. Some live mainly on fruit, others sip nectar. And a few have diets that include small animals. This variety lets bats fill many roles in the ecosystem without all competing for the exact same food. Certain fruit-eating bats can help forests regrow by dispersing seeds into disturbed areas. Because bats can fly over open patches and travel between forest fragments, they often deliver seeds to places where new plants are needed, supporting tea. Natural recovery after damage. Manaus is one of the Amazon's major urban centers, and its location near important river confluences has shaped its growth. The city sits where large rivers meet, which makes it a natural hub for trade, travel, and movement of goods through waterways that reach deep into the basin. Even today, Manaus is linked to many surrounding regions mainly by river and air travel, because continuous roads through dense rainforest are limited. In practice, this means boats remain essential for transport of people, supplies, and food between the city and river communities. Many Amazon economies are built around the rivers, including fishing, small-scale agriculture, transport services, and harvesting forest products. The river is both a food source and a road, so daily life often follows water levels, currents, and seasonal access. Floodplain agriculture often adjusts to the yearly rise and fall of water, with planting time to the period when floodwaters retreat. As waters recede, they can leave behind moist soils and nutrient-rich sediments that farmers use for crops during the lower water season. Forest products from the Amazon can include latex, resins, fibers, and medicinal plants, and these resources come from many different species. Harvesting them often requires detailed knowledge of where plants grow, how to collect without killing them, and when yields are best. Rubber extraction played a major role in Amazon history, shaping settlement patterns, labor systems, and trade routes. Because rubber trees were scattered across forest landscapes, many people traveled widely and established river-based networks to collect and transport latex. A remarkable number of Amazon species are still undescribed, meaning science has not formally recorded or named them yet. This happens because the region is so large, so diverse, and sometimes difficult to access, and because many organisms are small, rare, or hidden in the canopy. As survey methods improve and researchers reach previously unsampled places, new species are documented more often. Better tools like advanced cameras, genetic analysis, and canopy sampling help scientists detect organisms that would have been missed with older methods. The Amazon contains many microendemic species, which are species found only in very limited areas. These organisms may depend on particular soils, elevations, river types, or forest conditions, so they do not spread widely across the basin. Rivers can act as barriers that separate populations, especially for animals that rarely cross wide channels. Over long timescales, this separation can contribute to distinct populations, and in some cases, to unique species on different sides of major rivers. Because of this, large rivers often function like biogeographic boundaries, influencing which species live where. A river might be easy for fish or dolphins to cross, but it can be a serious barrier for some ground mammals, insects with limited dispersal, or forest animals that avoid open water. Some birds and primates show distributions that line up with river boundaries in parts of the Amazon. This suggests that rivers are not just physical features, they can shape long-term patterns of evolution, movement, and community structure. Plant communities in the Amazon can shift with subtle differences in elevation and drainage, even when changes are only a few meters. Small rises can mean less flooding, faster drainage, and different soil moisture, which can lead to different sets of trees and understory plants. Even modest elevation changes can alter flooding frequency and soil moisture, which then changes vegetation types. Over time, plants that tolerate frequent water loss-in dominate the wetter areas, while different species thrive on slightly higher ground that stays drier. Amazon forests can store water in vegetation and soils, influencing how rainfall moves into streams. Instead of rain rushing straight into rivers, forests can slow the movement, spreading it out through time and reducing sudden surges. Forested catchments often regulate runoff and reduce erosion compared with cleared land. Roots stabilize soil, leaf litter cushions the impact of rain, and the canopy breaks up heavy drops, which together help keep sediments from washing rapidly into waterways. When land is deforested, surface temperatures can rise, and local rainfall patterns can shift. Without shade and transpiration, the ground heats up more quickly and the air can become drier, which can influence cloud formation and rainfall timing in the Tacala surrounding area. Forest loss can also increase sediment runoff into streams, making water cloudier and changing habitats for fish and insects. More sediment can bury spawning grounds, alter oxygen levels, and reduce light available for aquatic plants. Some conservation efforts focus on reducing deforestation through better monitoring and enforcement. The idea is to detect clearing quickly, identify where it is happening, and strengthen the ability to respond before large areas are lost. Satellite monitoring has become a major tool for tracking forest loss, fires, and land use change across vast areas. Because satellites can repeatedly image the same regions, they help reveal patterns that would be impossible to see from the ground alone at Amazon scale. Sustainable forest management can include reduced impact logging, which aims to limit damage while still allowing timber use. This may involve careful planning of extraction routes, minimizing road building, protecting key habitat features, and reducing harm to surrounding trees. Community-based management can support conservation and livelihoods at the same time. When local communities have a strong role in decision-making and benefit from healthy forests, they often have more incentive and capacity to protect resources over the long term. The Amazon's ecological value includes supporting rainfall that benefits agriculture and water supplies in other regions. Because the forest influences moisture recycling and atmospheric transport, its condition can affect weather patterns far beyond the forest's boundaries. The Amazon is often described as a critical part of Earth's climate system because of its carbon storage and moisture cycling. It influences how much carbon stays locked in biomass and how much water vapor enters the atmosphere, both of which matter for climate processes. The region's biodiversity holds genetic resources that can be important for medicine, agriculture, and resilience. Genetic diversity can support disease resistance, crop improvement, and ecosystem stability because varied life forms provide many possible solutions to environmental stress. Many Amazon plants produce alkaloids, terpenes, and other compounds used in defense and signaling. These chemicals can discourage herbivores, inhibit microbes, or attract certain pollinators, showing that plants use chemistry as a powerful survival tool. Some of these plant compounds have been studied for possible pharmaceutical uses. Researchers investigate them because tropical plants often evolve unique chemistry in response to intense ecological interactions like predation, disease, pressure, and competition. Canopy diversity affects how much light reaches the understory, shaping plant growth and competition. A dense, multi-species canopy creates complex patterns of shade and sunflex, influencing which seedlings survive and which species eventually replace. Older trees. Some Amazon trees grow buttress roots large, flared roots at the base of the trunk that help stabilize tall trees. In shallow or wet soils, these roots spread out widely to provide support, like extra braces holding the tree upright. Buttress roots can also increase the surface area near the forest floor where nutrients are released from decomposing litter. Because many nutrients are concentrated near the surface, Having more root contact bare can help trees capture resources efficiently. Some trees depend on animals that can move large seeds, linking reproduction to large-bodied wildlife. If seeds are too big for small birds or rodents to handle, then large mammals or certain specialized animals may become essential for dispersal. When large seed dispersers decline, tree community composition can shift over time. Trees that rely on those dispersers may reproduce less effectively, while species with smaller, easily dispersed seeds may become more common, slowly changing GA. The forest's character. Floodplain lakes can be very productive fish habitats because they receive nutrient inputs and warm easily. During floods, they connect to rivers and forests, gathering organic matter and providing feeding and breeding areas that support abundant aquatic life. In low water seasons, fish can become concentrated in smaller water bodies, changing predator-prey dynamics. This concentration can make fish more vulnerable to predators and fishing, while also intensifying competition for oxygen and food within limited space. Oxygen levels in Amazon waters can fluctuate strongly, especially in stagnant floodplain areas where warm temperatures reduce dissolved oxygen. These swings matter because oxygen availability sets limits on which species can thrive and how actively they can feed and reproduce. Some fish and invertebrates are adapted to hypoxic conditions, meaning they can tolerate low oxygen. They may have behaviors like surfacing for air, slower metabolism, or special physiology that allows them to survive where other species would struggle. The Amazon canopy can host orchids, bromeliads, and ferns that depend on humid air and frequent rainfall. Living high above ground gives them access to light, but it also requires strategies for capturing water and nutrients without direct contact with soil. Many epiphytes reproduce with tiny seeds or spores that disperse by wind, allowing them to reach new branches far away. Because suitable surfaces are scattered, producing small, easily carried propagules increases the chance that at least some land in a good spot. Where epiphytes establish depends on bark texture, branch shape, and microclimate, because these factors control moisture retention and stability. Rough bark can trap water and debris, while certain branch angles can collect organic matter that supports root growth. Some Amazon forests develop nutrient hotspots where fallen fruits, carcasses, and animal droppings concentrate fertility. These patches can be small, but they create places where microbes, insects, and plants respond quickly to sudden resource abundance. These nutrient hotspots can influence which seedlings survive and how plants compete, because extra nutrients can give certain young plants an advantage. Over time, tiny differences like this can help shape the thinner scale pattern of vegetation on the forest floor. Large herbivores influence forest regeneration by browsing seedlings and dispersing seeds, and their feeding choices can shape which plants become common. By eating certain leaves and leaving others, herbivores can subtly guide the direction of forest growth. The Amazon's predator community includes cats, raptors, snakes, and caimans, and each predator targets different prey and habitats. This diversity helps distribute predation pressure across many species, preventing any single prey group from dominating unchecked. Many Amazon species avoid predation through strategies like grouping, camouflage, and nocturnal habits. These behaviors reduce detection, confuse predators, or shift activity to safer times, reflecting constant pressure to survive in a complex food web. Some monkeys use alarm calls that warn other species as well, creating shared vigilance networks. In a dense forest where visibility is limited, sound can travel farther than sight, and alarm calls become an efficient way to spread information about danger. Seasonal hydrology also drives fish movements, with migrations timed to flooding cycles that open routes and create breeding habitats. When waters rise, fish can reach floodplains, and forests, when waters fall, they return to channels and lakes, following the changing map of water. When river connections are disrupted, spawning success can drop for fish that rely on long-distance migrations. Because many species need to reach specific breeding grounds at the right season, and barriers can block routes or change the timing and flow conditions they depend on. Amazon wetlands can act like natural filters that trap sediments and transform nutrients before water reaches main channels. And this helps keep water chemistry balanced, while also supporting rich wetland food webs built around plants, microbes, and small aquatic animals. Aquatic plants and microbes can remove or transform nitrogen compounds in these waters, which matters because nitrogen strongly affects growth of algae, plants, and changing nitrogen forms can influence oxygen levels and overall water quality. The forest structure can reduce wind speed near the ground, and this calmer air environment helps keep humidity higher, reduces rapid drying, and shapes how grass, scents, spores, and small flying insects move through the understory. When wind is reduced under the canopy, it can affect insect flight, seed dispersal, and even how moisture lingers on leaves, meaning that the forest's physical shape quietly guides many small processes that add up to big ecological patterns. Because Amazon biodiversity is so high, many species occupy narrow dietary niches, which means they may feed on very specific fruits, insects, or plant parts, allowing many similar-looking animals to share the same forest without competing directly for exactly the same resources. Some insects specialize on particular host plants, forming close relationships where the insect's life cycle depends on finding the right plant to eat or lay eggs on, and this specialization can make insect diversity closely tied to plant diversity. Many Amazon plants use chemical cues to attract specific pollinators and reduce wasted pollen transfer, so the plant's scent, nectar, and flower shape can be tuned to match the behavior and body structure of one main pollinating animal. The Amazon contains important transition zones where rainforest meets other biomes, and these ecotones often support high biodiversity because species from both neighboring ecosystems can overlap, along with unique species adapted to the edge conditions. Ecotone regions can be sensitive to climate shifts because small changes in temperature or rainfall can tip the balance toward one vegetation type. Another, slowly moving the boundary between forest and non-forest landscapes. The Amazon's past includes periods of major environmental change that influenced where forests expanded or contracted, and evidence of these shifts can be studied through sediments, fossil pollen, and ancient landfalls. River terraces and old floodplain deposits can reveal previous river courses and environmental conditions, because as rivers cut downward or shift sideways, they leave behind layers that record past flow levels, sediment types, and landscape history. Sometimes archaeological evidence becomes visible when water levels drop, because low river stages can expose sites along riverbanks that are usually submerged or hidden, offering clues about long-term human presence and river-based settlement. Certain drought events have revealed rock art and carvings along river margins that are normally underwater, showing that past peoples marked landscapes that today may be submerged for much of the year. Many Amazon communities depend on seasonal fishing and river travel for food security and trade, so the timing of floods and droughts influences what can be caught, how easily goods move, and which routes are safe or practical. Traditional knowledge often includes precise understanding of fish spawning seasons, flood timing, and forest fruit cycles, because people who live close to these systems notice patterns over generations and use them to plan harvesting and travel. The Amazon's ecological functions rely on interactions among plants, animals, fungi, and microbes, meaning that the system works through relationships, pollination, decomposition, seed dispersal, predation, rather than being driven by any single magic A species. Many key forest processes, like decomposition, are carried out by entire communities of organisms working at the same time: fungi softening wood, insects shredding leaves, microbes finishing the breakdown so the recycling system stays active and efficient. Biodiversity can increase resilience because multiple species can perform similar roles. So if one species declines, others may partly fill the gap, helping the ecosystem continue functioning under stress and change. Some conservation approaches focus on keeping large, connected forest areas because connectivity supports wide-ranging animals, preserves moisture, recycling, and reduces the harmful edge effects that appear when forests are broken into fragments. Connectivity also supports genetic exchange among populations, especially for animals that need big territories, because movement between areas prevents isolation and helps maintain healthy genetic diversity over time. The Amazon's global importance is not only its immense size, but also its combined roles in biodiversity, freshwater cycling, and carbon storage, all of which influence Earth's living systems and climate processes. Scientific understanding of the Amazon continues to evolve as new technologies and field studies expand what we can measure, from canopy biodiversity, river chemistry, showing that even a famous ecosystem can still hold many unanswered questions. The Amazon rainforest can be understood as one linked system of forests, rivers, floodplains, people, and climate, where water movement connects habitats. Living organisms shape the chemistry of soil and air, and countless relationships keep the whole region working. And as you rest, it can be calming to remember that much of the Amazon's daily life runs on gentle rhythms: rain turning to river flow, leaves returning to soil, seeds traveling on wings, water or fur, and the forest quietly renewing itself again and again.